views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. You know, as I was preparing for this show, we had decided we were going to do a show about building better Bronx neighborhoods. And it occurred to me that with the benefit that I have of being able to oversee, in many ways, I see the entire Bronx. Many of our neighborhoods are fighting for essentially the same things. So as we went about selecting guests and making decisions on who is going to join us, I said, you know what, everybody's on the same page and many of the issues are the same. However, because of the beautiful way our neighborhoods are situated, there's a different point of view and different specific needs in those neighborhoods. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about building better Bronx neighborhoods. And we're going to start off this evening with two guests. We have the executive director of the 3rd Avenue BID, and he really has set up an entire operation, if you will. Congratulations to Michael Brady and all you've been doing down there. And I call it the downtown Bronx.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us on.
Nice to have you with us. And Chauncy Young, I got about 10 different titles for him. He's a board member at BCEQ. He's a coordinator of the Harlem River Working Group. He works at New Settlement Houses. Chauncy, nice to see you, and welcome back to BronxTalk as well.
Always great to be with you, Gary.
Thank you very much. So we're going to get into what you guys are doing now. But I want to do a little history so people know where we were, I don't know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So start with you, Michael Brady. What was it like down at 3rd Avenue and 149th Street at the Hub that you said, you know what, now that I'm here, we've got to make a change?
Sure. 3rd Avenue has always been a historic commercial district in the Bronx, with its roots, dating way back, to when the area was farmland. But over the past 10 years, we've seen rapid growth and development, and we've also seen, an uptick in some quality of life challenges, particularly focused on drug use. But 10 years ago, we had Bronx Chester renewal sites. To our north, we had, burned out lots that were left, from the 70s and 80s. And, the city, whether good, bad, or indifferent, had RFP'd out those parcels for development. And now we have an enormous amount of development happening around the Hub. There are new businesses coming in, but the Hub still struggles, like any transportation network would struggle, with moving people. We move about 300 to 350,000 people a day.
That is unbelievable.
So there are challenges that come with that. But in terms of where we were 10 years ago to where we are today, I think we're in a stronger position in terms of community engagement and activation. Certainly stronger than we were 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years ago, if somebody wanted to put up a building, they would just put up a building and that would be that. I think we have a lot of really good activist organizations which hold folks accountable. And it's not perfect, that's for sure, but definitely the community engagement end is finally being front-ended on a lot of these development projects, where before it was just a box that you would check.
You have basically taken my job away from me as a segue to Chauncy Young, because if you're talking about organizations that you work with who, work with communities, think about things like the environment and proper use of parcels of land so that they don't gentrify our neighborhoods. Chauncy over there in the West Bronx with New Settlement and the Harlem River Working Group and all the other things, that's what they do. So Chauncy, give me a little bit of the past, and then just like Michael did, bring us up to the present.
Definitely. And Gary, I'm going to focus today on the work with the Harlem River Working Group and Bronx Council for Environmental Quality, but we could spend the whole show talking about New Settlement and the way that New Settlement has transformed the Mount Eden community and the work of CASA and the Parent Action Committee and New Settlement as an organization connecting community and really working on making sure community is involved in community development. But we're focusing today on the waterfront itself and the entire length of the Harlem River waterfront. You can go from Community Board 1 up to 8, where community has been disconnected from that waterfront. And we have been working for over 20 years to reconnect the community. But in the past 10 years, 12 years ago, we formed the Harlem River Working Group, working to connect communities to the waterfront. We did a brownfield opportunities project along the entire length of the Harlem River from 149th Street North. The High Bridge, which I was at that point the chairperson of the High Bridge Coalition, we reopened the High Bridge a little over 6 years ago. We have taken waterfront properties from Depot Place north to Roberto Clemente State Park, and we have gotten new parkland. We've developed the Harlem River Greenway that now connects the High Bridge to the state park. And we've had $100 million renovation of the state park to really make it a flagship state park and really create more recreational opportunities for the community. So there's, a lot that has happened in this past 10 years and obviously a lot more.
A lot more that has to come. Two-part question, and then essentially what is remarkable to me is that the same questions then apply to Michael Brady. Number one, what is the relationship between improving the waterfront? I mean, the environmental issues are obvious, clean air, clean water, clean space, we know that. But what is the relationship between that and healthy communities? And then who do you partner with, and how are you able to do that? And I know right now Michael Brady is thinking to himself, oh yeah, I got a waterfront, I got development issues down there, and the same thing. So the same question to start with you, Chauncy. Why is it worthwhile, and who do you partner with to do these kinds of things?
So, I think first thing is, access to parkland and access to spaces where people can, get out and exercise safely, giving folks safe opportunities to commute to work or commute to the gym or just commute to see family members. Reopening the High Bridge was, connecting the Bronx and Manhattan, and developing a greenway would really allow us to transform the way that people get out to see one another. Unfortunately, we always raise this up, but Bronx County is still 62 of 62 counties across the state in terms of health disparities. So we really do need to be working to create opportunities for that. And when we're looking at who to connect with, on the federal level, we're working with the EPA, we're working with the Office of the Interior, New York, the USGS, U.S. Geological Survey, Forestry Department, Army Corps of Engineers. It's a part of the Urban Waters.
Look, what I want to interject, and I did this, look how many different organizations it takes. And maybe for those of us in the Bronx who don't have a lot of patience, which we don't, this is why it tends to take long. So, Michael Brady, you've got that whole southwest corner of the Bronx that's being developed. One of the quote unquote give backs is the fact that waterfront is going to be developed for everybody, not just the people who live there. I happen to notice that a building that used to be a warehouse had a boxing gym, and Empanology had their kitchen there, has been sold, and it's going to be housing. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? And then I want to get into with you, Michael Brady, some of the activities that you run that also fuel the better Bronx community.
Sure, and thank you for the question, Gary. And Chauncy's organization does amazing work, and environmental implications of the Harlem River waterfront, and indeed all the waterfronts in the Bronx, are really important to community power building. So I'm super grateful for Chauncy and his team for all the work that they do. But I think the South Bronx is experiencing this resurgence of attention. I used to say when I was the master planner for the waterfront that the South Bronx went through 5-year cycles. It was really hot, and then it cooled off because of whether an economic recession or a global calamity, and then it would build up again, and then it'd be really hot, and then it would cool off again. Pre-pandemic, I realized that there were just way too many cranes in the sky for it to experience another slowdown. And I think when we speak about what partners we pull in, particularly when we speak about development, I think it's got to be community first. We have to engage our churches, our environmental organizations, our elected officials, our NYCHA residents, and other organizations to make sure that whatever's happening is really grounded in community. And we've seen some great success stories for that, and then we've seen some other folks that really haven't done that piece of the pie very, very well. But I think the South Bronx, as a lot of folks are referring to it, it's going to see about 2,300 new units of housing. You have a significant investment in NYCHA, which will be announced in the near future, pedestrian safety programs and things of that sort. And I think that a lot of folks say, oh well, that's because gentrification's happening and people are moving into the neighborhood. I think
that is certainly what I was going to ask. That was the G word was the next one coming out of my mouth.
And I think there's definitely validity to that. But I think that there's also, this was just a solidly industrial area. So things like sidewalks didn't really exist. Cisterns, sewers, all those other things. Wow. Either they didn't exist or they were just so dilapidated. So I think that, when we speak about gentrification, there's gentrification, but then there's also like infrastructure investment, which I hate to muddy the water between the two, because I think everyone needs sewers. I think everyone needs street trees. And I think that sometimes the messaging gets muddied or convoluted because people just see these sky rises coming up, and people are arguably scared. I mean, they're scared about displacement. They're scared that a cup of coffee is going to cost them $4 instead of $1.10. Right. All of those.
Are you just about that building that I referred to that was that warehouse? Are you concerned that project? I think it's 60 of 200 are affordable. Whether they're permanently affordable is one of the questions. Are you concerned that that's the kind of development that's not going to kind of help the people who live in the Bronx now?
I think, at least right now in the current economy, I think that the market rate investments going to oversaturate the real estate market, particularly in that area, because so many units are coming on board right now. Mm-hmm. And also, I always try to push HPD and the property developers and property owners to really consider home ownership. I think that one of the ways that we can build generational wealth in our neighborhoods and really break a cycle of poverty is if people can own. And if people can own their apartment and have that commitment to their neighborhood.
As opposed to paying a landlord every month. That makes a lot of sense. I think the coalescence in many ways of a lot of those efforts are in La Centrale, which is the new housing development. Why don't you talk about that and tell us a little bit about what it's going to be? I will mention that it will have a BronxNet studio in there, which of course we're thrilled about. But talk a little bit about La Centrale and what it's going to mean to help transform the community.
Sure. So La Centrale is one of the largest public work projects that we've had to date in the South Bronx. It's going to be 996 units of housing, of which I think roughly 560 are already completed and being marketed and tenanted up. It's got about 18,000 square feet of ground floor retail. It has the YMCA on the south side of Westchester. It was something that took a really long time to get off the ground. I think Chauncy, you probably remember this, but the RFP was first released like 15 years ago. And it was a Bronxchester renewal site, one of those burned out lots. It was the last one that was there. And because it was the last one, I think it got a lot of and it was happening at a time where, the community was saying, hey, we want to have more say in things. We want to have more control over things. And I think La Centrale was, one of the first projects that we've seen in this neighborhood that really had some community buy-in and community visioning. And I think we can tell that by the tenant mix that's going in. Obviously, BronxNet taking space, the Taste of the Bronx.
Let me ask you this about it. Will Bronx people get those apartments? Are they affordable enough for Bronx? Because obviously housing is a big thing. You have a homeless series of issues over there. Is this really going to bring relief? And according to our original statement, is that a way to build a better Bronx neighborhood?
Yeah, I think La Centrale is a healthy mix for the neighborhood. It's got supportive housing. It has 30% AMI housing. It's got the middle bands of affordable housing in between. And the last piece is going to be market rate housing. And I think that what's important for folks to know is that, the market rate housing has to be there to offset the supportive housing and the 30% AMI housing to make financial sense on paper to a bank. But I also think by offering some level of market rate housing in the neighborhood will also increase the consumer spending in the area. I think maybe 5 years ago, the average consumer income was around, I want to say $26,000 for a family. I think with the market rate housing and with the middle income housing, we'll probably see that bump up to about $35,000 to $40,000, which is a market increase for our neighborhood. Not so much for Manhattan or Brooklyn, but for our neighborhood, that's a huge jump.
That's who we care about. You have I saw the number 500 small businesses. Wouldn't it be nice to have those businesses do better with our money, with people, spending 100%. On our money?
It'd be great if people spend their money here instead of jumping over to Harlem or Westchester or Riverdale or wherever folks can
wherever they go. Yeah,
it's also just a pain in the neck. You can walk across the block and go to your butcher instead of having to take the subway or hire a car or something and go grocery shopping.
Right. Let's shift gears a little bit. Chauncy, let's talk about your BCEQ event yesterday over at the High Bridge. You mentioned the High Bridge as being kind of a pivotal thing for that community. Talk to me about BCEQ, what you did yesterday, and what really where are we going with what happened yesterday?
Sure. So, and yesterday was for both the Bronx River and the Harlem River. It was the 10-year celebration of the Urban Waters Federal Partnership. And the Urban Waters Federal Partnership, Bronx River and the Harlem River were the first rivers in the country to be designated that 10 years ago. And it really is talking about bringing federal, state, city agencies together to work with communities to revision and reconnect communities with the waterfront. So what we're talking about right now, the whole focus of this program, connecting communities and revisioning and really, relivening and reconnecting our communities together. That is the whole vision of the Urban Waters Federal Partnership. So we were on the High Bridge because that really allowed us to see the connections that we are making, see some of the Greenway connections, and also about, to highlight some of the environmental changes that we've been able to make over the last few years. So that was what that event was about.
It was fantastic. And you know what I saw, which was fascinating to do, because the High Bridge connects Manhattan and the Bronx. I looked at the Manhattan shoreline and looked at the condition of the Manhattan shoreline. And then I looked straight down and looked at the condition of the Bronx shoreline. And I'm like, wait a minute, it doesn't work for me. I can tell you that. And it doesn't work for the Bronx. So that's really what you want to do, is clean it up. I also noticed that going down the steps, the High Bridge steps, it should lead to the waterfront. It kind of leads to, like, if you get down to the bottom of that, you're going to walk across the Major Deegan Expressway. That's not what we're doing. So that's the kind of thing that you want to work on and develop. And you believe that's part of the notion of building a better Bronx neighborhood.
Completely. And we were actually there to sort of highlight that. So that bridge, that Depot Place Bridge, we've worked with Assemblymember Joyner and all of our elected officials to really, with city DOT, state DOT. So that bridge is going to reopen with a 15-foot pedestrian and bicycle pathway that is separated with a concrete barrier.
I'm going to applaud while
So-
you talk about those
So
things.
those things are going to happen. And part of what we've been pushing, though, and we're going to continue to push, is equity for the Bronx in comparison with Manhattan, because Mayor de Blasio committed this past year's budget $744 million to finalize the border of a greenway along the entire border of the borough of Manhattan. And we've been working since 1992.
I feel like knocking on the
get a
door,
greenway
knock, knock,
plan.
knock, is like knock,
Yes.
knock, knock. What about us?
Exactly.
Michael Brady, you have engaged a considerable amount of energy and resource in doing cleanup of the neighborhood, and then bringing in events. I'm an incredible fan of these things. So why don't you talk about some of the events that you have? We have pictures of many of these events. Why don't you talk about some of those and what they mean for building a better Bronx neighborhood?
Yeah, I think that. Thank you for that. I think that events and public programs are really important because they exemplify the culture of a community, right? I think so often if we look at other boroughs, they'll do these helicopter events where people chopper in, they do their thing, and then they leave. One of the things that we do is we really ensure that any event, whether it's tutoring kids on Roberto Clemente Plaza to salsa to theater, that we try to recruit as many Bronx residents and as many Bronx organizations and as many folks who are Bronx artists as possible. So we brought in the public theater, and one of the things that we said with the public theater is we want at least half the cast to be from the Bronx, and we were able to secure that. And I think it's really important because those events and those free public programs aid in the economic development of the borough, but they also have a mental cue with our residents that says, oh wait, I can have nice things here in my neighborhood too. I don't have to travel to downtown
and I want to interject what you said about coming from the neighborhood, especially with Bronx people. If we see ourselves, if it's our music, if you're running a salsa show or a gay pride festival and all the other great things that you do over there, that really engages people, as you said. Otherwise they helicopter in and they say, oh yeah, we're going to do Shakespeare, and then they're going to do Shakespeare in Westchester. That doesn't help us. But if you see Bronx people doing it, then you begin to envision something a little better for yourself, etc.
And I think it's also about engaging the youth. We have a great relationship with an organization called Dancing in the Streets, and they take formerly court-involved young people who would get a summons or even sent to Rikers for dancing on the subway, and they actually formalize a dance course, and then they get the appropriate permits, and then they actually get these paid gigs to come and either work, to perform at the plaza, or in one case a judge was having an event, and he was so anti this program, but the kids went to his event and performed, and it totally reversed his mentality.
Wow.
on how to engage with formerly court involved youth.
Chauncy Young, what do you do in terms of the local community? How do you get them involved?
I mean, I think that's the core.
And are they enthusiastic, or is it one of these? We can't find people. They are.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a huge issue for a community to have access to the waterfront. We've, involved all of our local schools around the Depot Place issue, our NYCHA Tenants Association. And we just got over this past week, we've got about 400 to 500 Bronx students from District 9. They all had to be walking distance to the state park, but out on the river canoeing from 4
Wow.
elementary and middle schools. So it's all about, as I completely agree, it's all about connecting community and also making sure that everything that's being done is in the community's vision. We're actually we've done an art contest for folks to re-envision their neighborhood. We had them re-envision the reopening of the High Bridge, re-envision the High Bridge Middle School when it was open, and we're right now talking about re-envisioning connecting to your waterfront as sort of an art contest for local school students, so people are thinking about what they would like to see, how we would like to connect them. We have no boating programs right now in the Bronx where people get out on the Harlem River. we need to change that,
Right.
as we need to work
So
with
here
all
you've
those
got all
people.
that waterfront. You've got all that waterfront. You have all that energy, and yet, what's happening? I have, as I mentioned earlier, the benefit of working with all the Bronx communities that come on our program. The things that you two are talking about with the activities, with art shows, with including Bronxites in these processes, every neighborhood wants them. Walk to a Bronx neighborhood and say, do you want a music program for your kids? Do you want an art show for your kids? Like these kinds of play space. Do you want extra tutoring or other things? Do you want a plaza like they created in Third Avenue for Roberto Clemente Plaza? And they create it and they clean it and they take care of it and they invite people. Every community wants that. On the other hand, here's a picture of them cleaning. I mean, this stuff goes on all the time down there. I do want to, you can see the considerable effort put into it. I do want to, now I have this letter that Michael Brady wrote to the mayor. The other thing about Bronxites, which I have learned from sitting here, we're bold. We're going to tell people what we think. Michael Brady wrote a very strong letter to the mayor, a lot of it focusing on drugs and gangs and asking for the kinds of support signed there by a number of business owners. Michael, why don't you talk about writing that letter, who it went to, and we got about, I don't know, take about a minute to do it, and what your hopes are for the future to get somebody to respond to these things.
Sure. The hub has always been a complicated place, right? We move about 350,000 people a day. We have, issues with drugs and gang violence and homelessness. And it's unfortunate that, city government will sooner put the resources into Manhattan or Washington Square Park to get supplies of the services that they need.
Sorry for groaning.
No, it's true. But when the neighborhoods like the Bronx in particular, and the South Bronx, need access to those resources and those city agencies for services, it falls upon deaf ears. So, the impetus of the letter was, I think the business owners and property owners were really getting frustrated, and COVID-19 really exacerbated a lot of the quality of life challenges that we felt here. And we felt, and every commissioner that's come to visit has agreed that, there just aren't enough resources that come up here to address all the quality of life issues that we have. And I think number one on my list personally is drug use and gang violence. Once we can handle that, I think everything else is manageable. Sanitation will be manageable. Transportation infrastructure will be manageable. But I think, the drugs...
I need to interrupt you because we're going to run out of time, and I want to give Chauncy a chance for final words as well. But what is clear about those very vexing issues, and you've done this before with opioids and things like that, is bringing in a comprehensive plan. You're not just going to throw money at it and have it work. You got to have partners. You got to make it work. Chauncy Young, your final words about what's next and what you see. You got about 35 seconds into it.
Sure. I mean, I think Michael's right. I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring everyone together and hold the city and state accountable to say that the Bronx deserves everything that the city deserves. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the changes that happen are for the residents that are living here now. We're not trying to create a better Bronx for new folks to come from Manhattan and Queens to be here. That can happen, but we want to make sure residents that are here are able to enjoy the improvements that we're able to make in the Bronx and feel like it's their vision that's being created.
I would like to just add, come to the Bronx, spend a couple of dollars, shop in our stores, and then have a wonderful life elsewhere. That would be fine. Nonetheless, selfish? Yes. Michael Brady, thank you so much for building a neighborhood down in the South Bronx. And Chauncy Young, thank you for handling the shoreline on the West Bronx. And next week, we're going to do a preview of election night. So we'll do that. So everybody take care, stay safe, and we'll see you around the BX. Good night.
Thank you.